Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Propeller panel entitled What is Gen Alpha's Big Ask of E-Commerce? Hands up anyone who's Gen Alpha in the room. It's a trick question, okay? The age band is normally put at age 6 to 16, and they're sometimes called Generation iPad. And here's a little more colourful slide of what they might look like, or some of them. Okay, now I'm Branwell Johnson, I'm Group Director of Content at Propeller, and I'm moderating the session this afternoon. Propeller is a specialist PR, content and growth marketing agency. We've got a lot of clients in e-commerce, MarTech, advertising and media, and we're also running the PR for eCommerce Expo and Technology for Marketing. If you want to talk to us, we're on the stand B10, just 60 seconds walk away. But apart from that, I'm also as far away from Gen Alpha as you can probably get, as I'm the last of the boomers. It feels like the last of the Mohicans sometimes. However, I do have 2 children just exiting Gen Alpha, so I've got some personal experience to bring to my esteemed panel and their insights. Now, over the next 40 minutes, we're going to talk about the kind of expectations we think Gen Alpha are going to have as they move into adulthood and how they want to engage with brands, marketing, e-commerce, and general overall kind of engagement and immersion. We should have time for Q&A as well, so do think as we go along of any questions. We don't have crystal balls, we can't give you exact answers, but we can give you viewpoints. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the panel now. Immediately next to me we have Ollie Shea, Director of Omnichannel and Media Planning at Boots UK and Republic of Ireland. Ollie oversees consumer media strategy and leads the pioneering retail media group of Boots. He's previously worked on brands such as Booking.com, Diageo and Nestle. And then next to him we have Leah Karam, the multi-award winning behavioural scientist and consulting director at Behave Consultancy. Leah is a leading expert in consumer behaviour. She's also the winner of Campaign Media Week's 30 Under 30 2022 and Management Today 35 Women Under 35. So she's something of an underachiever, but we're very glad to have her with us. Further along, we've got Libby Gordon, who is the UK CEO of the charity Fara Foundation, which supports vulnerable children and adults in Romania. King Charles is a patron. They have 40 stores in London, and they've just produced a report called Generation Dread about Gen Z and Gen Alpha's struggle to reconcile fast fashion and sustainability. So I'm sure she'll bring some particular insights from that sector into the conversation. Now, some quick, Ruth, I mean, if you got your Ruth at the end, last but not least, Ruth Arbour is Industry Head, Fashion, Retail and Beauty at Snap. She leads the large client solutions team, manages partners who look after brands like Nike and Gymshark. Okay, that's our panel. Quick scene setter. Gen Alpha is forecast to be the biggest and most diverse group of people of generation to date, reaching 2.2 billion by 2025. And within 2 years, the top end of Gen Alpha is going to start entering further education, taking up apprenticeships, entering the workforce possibly, and we hope they'll have some money as well, some disposable income. In fact, $5.6 trillion worth of spending power is forecast from Gen Alpha by 2029. Now, what I'd like to do is to see what brands they might favour now. That's always useful, and very handily, Beano Brain provided a top 100 cool brands for kids ranking very recently, and there it is. So right now, according to this bit of research, these are some of the brands they're very much into at the moment. A lot of tech, YouTube, Netflix, a lot of social media. Many of these brands will be hoping that Gen Alpha stays loyal into adulthood. No doubt the streamers and the tech brands, and maybe Crocs as well. So that's just a snapshot of a moment in time where they are. And I'm going to give a couple of provocations, a few stats that I've gleaned from various pieces of research just to set us up. So apparently Gen Alpha are brand aware. 49% of household spending is impacted by Gen Alpha. 92% of parents say children introduce them to products, services and brands. At the age of 13, they own as many devices as the average adult, and the top 3, obviously the smartphone, the laptop and the gaming console. Apparently they gravitate towards creative and inspirational brands, while Gen Z at the same age as Gen Alpha were more into snack brands and kind of confectionery brands. And finally, apparently Gen Alpha enjoy shopping in store more than online, 69% versus 63%, according to a VML poll from a few months ago. We'll caveat that research as a snapshot of a moment in time, obviously. Right, shall we get into it, gents? Yeah? All right then. I think the obvious first question is your business beginning to think about its relationship with Gen Alpha and why? And Ollie, maybe you could lead us off?
Yeah, so, blimey, that's up. Good afternoon, lovely to see you all. So yeah, definitely, I think from a Boots perspective, everything you've just touched on, Branwell, is really key. You know, this is an audience that's got huge kind of power directly already through their parents. It's informing their parents of the brands that they want to buy, but also they're going to be the next generation of buyers into Boots, and particularly in categories like beauty, where we know they're very, very brand conscious. They're very thoughtful about the brands they have, and equally also about the information about what they're putting onto their skin and their body. So it is going to be a generation that is more informed than their parents on what they should be doing. So we're already thinking about how do we begin to help educate their parents, to help them educate them in the right way.
Yeah.
And we're definitely recognizing that the way in which we talk to them and the way in which we are able to offer them the services, experiences is going to be quite different to the current generation we have. But I'm really excited about probably what that next generation will kind of bring.
I think I'm competing against an auctioneer over there, by the way. So if you've got headphones near you, I would put them on. Okay.
Phenomenal voice.
Go on, Ruth.
Yeah, I can just add to that. So 90% of 13 to 24-year-olds are on Snapchat and using it every day. So we have very, very high penetration of Gen Alpha and Gen Z. And, you know, essentially Snapchat is a core platform for them because it's where they can come to communicate with their friends. And actually it's very different, right, to what us millennials are used to. Plays a very different role to traditional social media. It's not about, you know, publicizing your perfect image of yourself to lots of people. It's about authentic one-to-one communication with the people that Gen Alphas love the most, which is their friends and their family. So everything we do at Snapchat, everything we build are for those communities. And I think everyone will be aware, like Snapchat has always led with innovation. We were the first to invent vertical video, and that stories format now is super popular across multiple platforms. And then you'll see new innovations, you know, released by Snapchat constantly. We've got My AI now built into the chat functionality, so that's a new way for Gen Alpha to, you know, do research on products or things that they're interested in and find out more information. We've got augmented reality, which is a really native behavior on our platform. But yeah, Gen Alpha is definitely super important. It's a key part of our community, and we continue to build around that audience.
Thank you, Ruth. Libby, do you want to talk about how you're thinking about Gen Alpha, or if you are thinking about Gen Alpha?
Well, so we are, at Fara Charity Shops, we are a bricks and mortar business, and so, like all of you, we rely on customers. And we did a piece of work, it's now a little while ago, looking at what we need to do as a charity shop chain to, I suppose, engage Gen Alpha and Gen Z in what we've got to offer and continue that great British tradition of shopping and donating to charity shops. And so we are really conscious. We also have within our shop footprint, quite uniquely for charity shops, 14 children's shops across London. And so there's a real opportunity for us to engage both parents, but also young people through secondhand in that space. And so we've really started to think about what are the touch points that they're really interested in. And one of the things, which I can come back to, is that real awareness and understanding of the environment, environmental issues, and the desire to be sustainable. And we obviously think that charity shops are a great way to, I suppose, tick that box. And for us, particularly engaging that next generation in sustainability and reuse is important for us because it means that we keep raising money for the work that we do. But also it's really important for the environment and for the planet.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Leigh, have you got any observations about why we should be thinking of Gen Alpha now? You know.
Yes, of course. So obviously I come in from a consulting perspective, so I work with several brands and a lot of them are starting to think about Gen Alpha. Before that, who here is a parent of Gen Alpha? Do you understand them? Okay, they've got a brand new language. You know what Riz is? Skibidoo. Negative aura. That's who they are. That's why we're being proactive. That's why we're doing that. You talked about changing formats. You talked about social responsibility. You also talked about parents, right? So we have to start looking at those trends, those micro communities, those digital identities, and how they come out in the real world. But also change, not just change, adapt our tone of voice to be able to resonate with them and not lose them out. So the reason we're seeing that and we're seeing a growth in understanding that consumer base, that generation early on, the top end is 16 and 14 sometimes as well, is because their formats are different. It's because they've got a different language. It's because they also value experiences that we're not even aware of. You mentioned them liking in-store experiences. Who would have thought that? That's because they actually want to connect with people. They want to connect with their friends. We need to do that in a hybrid way. So yes, to answer your question, we've been seeing that because they're not just different, they're also very surprising. So that's one of the reasons from a behavioral point of view, we're actually experiencing demand in understanding Gen Alpha.
Okay, well, I just want to land back, and you've just mentioned it again, that in-store experience and that VML stat, which is 69% prefer in-store against 63% e-commerce. Do you think that was just a blip of that particular point of research? Is there something to think about and take forward as you craft strategies and think about Gen Alpha? Do you want to pick it up, Libby?
So one of the things that we have thought quite a lot about at Fara is how we create a great in-store experience. I think particularly after COVID, lots of us were like, well, if we're going to get out of bed, it's got to be worth it. But also as well, so we have thought quite a lot about how we're kind of creating, I suppose, in-store shopping events or unique things to come along to. And I think coming back to what you were talking about, that connection between the kind of online and offline, so creating digital buzz ahead of things like in-store experiences that then people are really easily able to share on their various channels with all of their friends to create that wider community. And so, we have 40 physical shops. I'm a bricks and mortar business. We have an online shop. So I'm, of course, going to say I still think that in-store experience is really key. But I think for us, it's particularly about that. How do you create community, both physically around a shop and online? And it's about that interconnection between the two. So, I'm hoping, like me and the rest of the other charities that rely hugely on their retail income, that in-store experience stays. And we're really thinking about how we make that exciting and interesting and shareable for those next generations.
Okay. Go on, Ruth.
I think if you think about a lot of us, shopping in store was like the normal way to shop, and then online shopping came along, and particularly in COVID, we saw, huge transformation of the way we could do that online. That was probably quite exciting for a lot of us. But for Gen Alpha, that is their norm. Online shopping, seamless shopping experiences, next day delivery, being able to shop every single brand they've ever heard of online is what they've grown up and what they're used to. And what there is probably become more exciting, particularly in a post-COVID world, is the ability to go into a store and touch product and see what experiences are happening there. And I think in-store experiences, a lot of retailers have really had to rethink what that in-store experience is like. And then the key part is that they get to do that not only on their own, but with the people that they love the most, which is usually their friends or, with their parents. So I think the in-store experience, and I think the key word in that piece of research from VML was enjoy. They enjoy the in-store experience because it's more rich. It gives them something different to what they're used to. And certainly we see, for Snapchatters, that they love to connect people in real time. Snap Maps is a huge part of our platform. So, and they're snapping wherever they are in store, from the changing room to their friends online or when they're with their mates. So, yeah, we definitely don't think that's a blip. We think it's a really interesting trend. And then for retailers, it's really about how do you keep them engaged once they're there.
Yeah, just to add to that point, obviously you tapped into this, it's so important to realize that instant gratification is not a hero factor anymore. It's hygiene now. It's something that they're used to. It's not something that they're requiring or expecting. It's something that they're just so used to that it's so ingrained with them that we need to delight them on enjoyment and storytelling and really find them within their micro communities and delight them there. And literally, when you think about it from a psychological point of view, what brands used to do in the past and trying to push convenience and trying to push, next day delivery, that's not going to work with them because they're so used to that. And just adding to this as well, we need to think about the parents as much as we think about Gen Alpha too. A lot of the upper end of Gen Alpha specifically grew up in the middle of the pandemic. Those are very formative years. They spend time with their family. They learn from their millennial, empathetic, open parents as well. It's a very different generation. More than 70% of Gen Alpha parents are millennial. Now, from a behavioral point of view, I'm quite biased. How can we dissect millennial parents to really understand that and how that actually influenced Gen Alpha? So loads to speak about, but that point that Ruth just mentioned is one of the most important points to keep in mind. Instant gratification is not hero anymore, it's hygiene. So we need to delight them.
Ollie, have you got anything to add on the in-store?
I think it's a critical element. I think the key point I think Ruth touched on is about enjoyment. So when we look at it, it's about how do you create an experience in store where they want to go either with their friends. And I think what you also see is the brands that do that really well, and we see it a lot, have huge acceleration with this audience because they create experiences where they want to be part of it. And for me to go into our stores and see consumers filming content of them using products in store and then meeting people from the brands within that they're then creating content to then share with their friends, as well as an experience they're having with their friends at the time that they're queuing up to be part of, is an indication of the desire from it. So I think it's those brands that are able to tap into that and understand their audience and create demand within it, understand them and the unique experience they can offer them, are going to be the ones that are going to be very successful in the future.
Excellent. Leah, I'll start off and come back to Leah because of your specialism, though anyone else can join in. But Leah, what do you think are the influences from your perspective that are shaping their behaviours, Gen Alpha behaviours?
So when we look at it from a top factors perspective, there are three main factors that led to that one. I love my 3 points for anyone that knows me, but the first one is the changing of formats. We saw YouTube at the top, obviously Snapchat is at the top. Those peer recommendations, those peer reviews, the streaming culture. How are broadcasters tapping into that right now? Again, a big challenge for them to be able to tap into those formats. So changes of formats is the first point. The second point is we talk about it more and more, and it's kind of linked to the first point. We always talk about the loop at the moment and not the funnel. We used to look at the traditional ADA model, right? For marketers in the room, most of you are. We talked about awareness to purchase, right? That traditional funnel. I mean, I can literally, looking at my degree like 8 years back, I can go back to them and say, actually, that's completely revamped. Awareness and purchase happen at the same time. People can know about your brand, and Alpha knows about your brand before you even speak to them. So again, we need to rediscover that loop. Micro communities are a key part of that. Creators, influencers, those advocates, those champions are a big part of that. Now, the third point is a really interesting one. It links up to the question that we sometimes have about Gen Alpha being brand loyal. Why do we think they're a bit more brand loyal when there's so much choice out there? There's choice overload. That's because they're so used to personalization. They're so used to developing that selective memory that they interact with brands differently. They filter out information differently. So they tend to actually behave with a set of brands that reflect their digital identities in store and digitally. So those are kind of the 3 points, I'd say. The change of format, the loop, not the funnel, the change of funnel, if you will, and then the fact that they're so used to personalization, echo chambers, filter bubbles, etc., that behaviorally their selective memory is even more reinforced.
Anyone? Yep, Ruth?
Yeah, I think one of the number one influences on Gen Alpha's purchases is, like it is probably for many of us, is actually their friends. So if you guys think about, well, certainly for me, if I'm buying a dress for I'm going to a wedding, let's say, the person whose opinion I care about most is my mates. So I'm going to be sending them a load of links through and showing them what the dress looks like on. And honestly, I take their opinion is more important than ever. And that is the same for Gen Z. It's the same for Gen Alpha. So friends are their number one. So, so the brands that they love, they're talking about those brands with their friends. They're talking about what they want to buy and what they want to purchase even before they have the money to actually do it. And then they're influencing their parents to buy it for them. And as Leah touched on, we also know that influencers, creators are having an absolutely huge impact, right? And that's sort of an extension, like you were saying, of their identity, who they follow, what they're into, and they're getting those really personalized recommendations from people that they can really relate to or look up to. So yeah, I think those are some of the key influences in their lives.
And just to bring in a slightly different perspective, all of that as well. I mean, I sent pictures to my mates of what I was wearing today to get them to help me to decide. So yeah, there you go. I'm all right. But I think from our perspective, where there's a real, I suppose, this hyper awareness of sustainability, and both wanting to be kind of sustainable, to be seen as being environmentally conscious, to be seen as doing something, while also at the same time being seen as being fashionable and cool and linked to all of these brands. And it's a real, I suppose it's a conflict, but I think, of course I would say, charity shops are a key part of the circular economy, and I think as brands, there is a real, I suppose, need to both act sustainably. Changes in legislation are coming through that are going to force people to do it, but actually in terms of engaging that next generation, showing and being really transparent about what it is that you are doing to make real change in terms of your environmental impact. And there's been a shift in terms of brands kind of saying, we're not there yet, but here is how we're getting there. So rather than having to be kind of perfect, showing that I am working towards being environmentally sustainable, and you wearing this brand also shows that you are, I suppose, helping that as well. So yeah, that's from me, that piece.
You got anything you want to bring to that point, Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add, we touched on already, they've grown up in a world where influencers are the form of advertising, where they take their knowledge from. So it's in the same way where we grew up with our own types of advertising, that's the type of advertising that they're used to. And I think the real challenge for brands in this generation is interest in product goes really rapidly, very fast, and then it dissipates. And the ones that will be successful are the ones who can understand how to create the cycle to continually create new product, new interest, and I think to that point that the difference between consumer and their awareness and then purchase is so short now, because they can purchase automatically through social, that I think that's going to be a big challenge.
So are you talking about influencer created brands or social platform created brands here, and the burnout factor? And you can name names if you want.
No, I mean, I think no, I won't do that. But I think you can see it. I mean, I think there's brands that we all know, I'm sure from consuming social media, that were incredibly hot, that suddenly appeared and disappeared. And so I think because the ability to have that scale really quickly is now present, that's not been there previously, that allows that to happen. But the challenge is, how do you then have that? How do you not burn out? And those who have done it really well have brought continual newness to the brand, continual celebrity, continual engagement of kind of influencers in it.
I just was about to add to this point that Snap is obviously doing a great job at this, not being biased at all, obviously, but because you actually have to embed that into a lifestyle, as you said, into a digital identity that then translates within your real life with your friends, your family, and AR. Obviously, AR enables that. It enables that hybrid experience. So brands are able to tap into that and use technology, for instance, as an enabler, and use friendships as an enabler as well, are the ones that tap into that real human factor, and can actually sustain that growth.
Yeah, and I think just touching on some of those hybrid experiences, like you were saying, Leah, and actually we've done some great work with Boots around this. So I think AR has been, something that we all think of as an emerging or a new technology. Actually, it's 300 million Snapchatters using AR every single day. We've been building AR experiences for 8 years, so it's not new to us or our community. It's very much a native behavior, and AR provides this really amazing deep level of engagement that is truly hybrid. So it's putting the user at the center of that experience. So for Boots, we've built out some sort of beauty try-on experiences. We've done it for Estee Lauder, MAC, L'Oreal. And you can literally see how makeup looks on you and on your face, rather than going in store and maybe physically applying it. And then AR's also helped sort of link the online and the in-store world as well. So we've worked with retailers to put AR experiences into stores. So if someone's waiting for a pair of trainers and the store's very busy and you're sitting around, actually you can unlock a try-on experience there and then. So yeah, I think these sort of hybrid, it's not necessarily just because it's a digital experience doesn't mean it's just for online. It can help provide this sort of hybrid experience and very different shopping experience that Gen Alpha ultimately are going to expect from their shopping experiences.
Okay, well now we're deep into the experience. I would like to move a little more into the shopping experience itself. The person who coined the phrase Generation Alpha apparently was a guy called Mark McCrindle, who was a social researcher. Whether you believe that or not, it's up to you, it's what Wikipedia says. But he pointed out, quote, in the virtual spaces where Gen Alpha does hang out, almost the entire online or digital interaction is commercially orientated. So just hold that thought for a second. Given that and bear that in mind, what kind of experiences will they be looking for, and what other tools and strategies have you got to deliver it? Go on, you can do that one.
Wow, that's a big one.
It is a big one.
It's a big one. I think, Reid started to touch on it. Like, we've seen it. So when we started to look at like the world of AR, where you're merging the two worlds together, initially we thought it's entertainment, right? It's about giving experience to a customer to kind of close the gap between what would be a traditional kind of experience you'd have in store, try product on, and then you purchase. Actually, what we see is it's not just about entertainment in the digital space. It definitely drives kind of return both in the digital space and in the store environment. So I think it's just about changing our perception about what we're going to do. But the other key thing, which is part of the work we've been doing, is about testing and learning into that world, because it is very different to perhaps what we would have traditionally done, which is to showcase maybe someone trying on a product rather than actually enabling someone to do that. So I think there are increasingly different commercial opportunities in this space that we have to think about how we will look at how it would look in the future, and I don't think we've got all of the answers for it yet.
No, we have viewpoints, not answers,
100%.
as we said earlier. Anyone else got a viewpoint?
Yeah, I think I'll just talk a bit more about, the AR space, because it is an area that, we're a market leader and we've been developing technology, constantly. So one of the new innovations that we're building out, for anyone that's a retailer here and has run across social platforms, you'll be familiar with dynamic product ads, where you can essentially plug your product feed into these platforms and they'll auto-create ads for you. Now, for me and for many of us growing up, we're used to seeing products of clothing or beauty products on models, on 2D images of models, right? And the problem with the whole return rate, challenge is that ultimately when you get that product home, it looks very different on you to how it looked on that beautiful model. So, surprise, surprise. So I think what AR is doing, and certainly the capabilities we're building out, is trying to make AR much more scalable. So our view is that AR is just another video, it's just another asset in the same way video or static is. So you will be able to run like dynamic ads products and basically link a try-on experience to every single one of those products if you have the 3D asset available, so the user can then try it on before they purchase. And with all the innovations around AI and building bigger ML models, we're making this quicker and easier to do. So now we can create AR experiences literally in a couple of minutes. We can take a 2D image and create an AR experience for you. And I'm hoping this time next year, you'll see more and more retail brands essentially running virtual try-on AR as a part of their, commercial activity, and that again will be the norm. And it's really solving a big problem for retailers, which is for online, the return rates are extremely high, and that is where I think AR can really solve and provide a better shopping experience, and also help retail businesses.
Okay, anyone? Yeah, go on.
Just again, as you say, it's not just commercial. Again, bringing the human part to it, because there are two things that brings to life. One, it reduces what we call like it increases actually like shortcuts, and it reduces the decision-making process. So that's called like heuristics. So you're able to kind of reduce that buyer's remorse and showcase that visual experience, because the second point is Gen Alpha is very visual, extremely visual. They communicate with reels. You know, like if you look at my little cousins, all they do is communicate with reels, you know, so you have to tap into those two factors, and it goes beyond the commerciality of it because it taps into an actual human experience. One, it reduces the decision-making process, it reduces that buyer's remorse, it taps into those shortcuts and heuristics that we need as humans, you know, there's choice overload out there. And again, the second part is it taps into that visual appeal that Gen Alpha scores really, really, really highly on. So that's why it works really, really well beyond commercial reasons.
Yeah, and it's personalised, right? So
Exactly.
it means that they can actually see that product on them versus, you know, a model or someone else. So yeah.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it brings back that law of like that self-identity. We talked about digital identities. Beyond that, you know, you've got Bitmojis. I mean, it's scary. My Snap, yeah, obviously, Bitmoji looks like me, and it's beautiful because at the end of the day, it's not just about like who you are like as a person. It's also how you speak to your friends, your community, your network, different people, the creators that you connect with. You know, everyone and anyone's becoming a creator. So we're going to see, and again, it brings back that point that we spoke about a lot, that hybrid side, this digital identity is going to be extremely, extremely linked to that real life identity, not just with kids, with parents as well, not just Gen Alpha. You'll be surprised the amount of parents that communicate with their kids on Snap and communicate with their kids using those visual cues. It's fascinating.
Do you think, and anyone can take this question, do you think that Gen Alpha is going to be very comfortable with data sharing, or they're slightly more guarded and more aware of their privacy, because obviously data is going to matter an awful lot as you shape the experiences and personalization? So I'm just keen to see what your take is on their view of their personal data and how they regard it, prize it and trade it. Anyone want to pick that one up?
So basically, from a data perspective, you talk about sunk cost here. They already gave their data away. I mean, they're born with like smartphones in their hands. So at the end of the day, there are so many data sunk costs that exist for them that at the moment, to be really honest, they're at a point where they want to be delighted, they want to enjoy those experiences, but again, still being careful about where they go, what they read, etc. Which is why a lot of brands and big tech platforms that have that trust and that built that trust and that obviously have 10 years of experience in developing, you know, AR, for instance, like those are the platforms where they want to be present and share information because it existed when, obviously, as soon as they were like born, and they already gave their data away to different providers. So honestly, it's attention there. They give their data away. That's fine. Let's be delighted. Let's use it. Let's enjoy it. But at the same time, they're being safeguarded with their parents as well, obviously, through that because they're too young anyway. They're at the
They
point
are
where
now. I mean,
exactly,
obviously,
but they
to
will.
know
Yeah,
how
exactly.
they're going to feel when they get those T&C forms themselves.
We-
I mean,
from
Libby,
a-
have you got anything to
yeah.
add to this particular point about anything you've observed to do with how they might act in the future around what they share, knowledge they share about themselves? Do they?
You go. I don't.
Yeah.
Look, I think what's interesting about this, they're going to be the most well-educated, right, about their usage, and I think there's a level of awareness there now. So, you know, and Snapchat's very conscious of this. We have a parent centre for any of you that are parents and have kids on Snapchat. You know, you can see who your kids are snapping with and make sure, whilst you can't see the content of the message, there are checks there so you can monitor that. I think these kids are essentially growing up in a world where they are being monitored by their parents and probably being educated on the impact, right? And, you know, a lot of the functionality that we built in Snapchat, again, is the opposite of social media. Like, we didn't want to build a platform that is highly addictive and means that they're spent all their time there. Like, we want to encourage real relationships and them spending real time, which is why, you know, they're coming back to Snapchat frequently, but certainly shorter periods of time. So I think this is going to be a very well-educated audience. And I think, like Leah was saying, they will be well aware that they are where they are willing to give their data to be given a personalized experience. I mean, we all work in the digital space. Even for me, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm going to opt in. Show me what products are most relevant to me. I want to see the latest brands. Like, that's the way I like to use platforms. So I just think they are going to be smarter about it, but they might be more controlled about where they're spending their time and how they're spending it online.
Ollie, you got anything?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ruth. I mean, I think it's going to come down to value exchange because they know the value of their data. They know that they will. You've seen already the use of things like ad blockers. They will take advertising out if they don't think there's value that is attached to it. So I think for us, it's going to be about how we can really show value in what they're doing and the data they give and what the return is for that, probably more than any generation previously.
Okay, we're going to come to the end of our conversation very soon, so do think of any questions you want to put to the panel. I just want to flip the script a bit. We've obviously talked about a lot of research we've read and a lot of data points we've seen, but I'm also curious to know that any kind of insights you'd challenge that we've heard, and Libby, maybe you might want to kick off with anything you'd challenge that we've already read out and pored over.
Yeah, so obviously, as I've mentioned, we are much more of a physical shop than an online shop, and I did say I am talking at an e-commerce conference, so. But I do think, we've touched on a number of the different bits about that, I suppose, that real experience. And one of the things that we were discussing was that there is a growing trend, and I think actually probably coming back to the data point, a growing awareness of just how quickly information moves in the digital age. And, I am seeing, I suppose, a lot of both parents and schools who are restricting access to smartphones. There is a real drive from people to kind of restrict access to certain social media platforms until 16. And so I do think that there is there is an expectation of digital, but actually the accessibility of that, we may well be getting more people kind of, I suppose, growing up. We've just heard they are interested in in-store experiences. If they can't have their phones at school, they're interested in an in-store experience. I'd be saying, come and hang out in our charity shop where you'll find something that you won't even see online. Because it's really hard for us to get our stock online, and it's really unique because it might have been donated an hour ago and put on sale. And so I do think that there are, and you're also seeing people going away on holiday, digital detox. So there is a kind of, I suppose, I think Branwell, you said it, a wrinkle in the system there, and I think that's something that is of interest to us because we think we fit that gap, which is great. We'll grab hold of that. But yeah, I think that, and also this desire for potentially, for having less because of that environmental impact. And so, that sort of having less, there's a reference, I think it was to Business Insider that we were reading around this, some Gen Alpha and Gen Z really focusing on things like decluttering as well. So it's almost like anti-consumerism, but still sharing about it on all of the channels. But yeah, anyway, I've just kind of shared a couple of those thoughts around that, but yeah, I suppose it's not a kind of they are all like this is my main thing. They are different and unique and creative, and some of them will be doing that in a completely non-digital way, and some of it will be doing it in a wholly digital way. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. I think obviously that's a great point because we often talk about that. We talk about the fact that Gen Z, we saw that with them, and we're seeing it a bit more with Gen Alpha at the moment. Some of them are actually purchasing burner phones, but what that says to me is there's this like hot and cold factor that's happening. It's like either this or that. It's quite extreme. What does that mean for us? In the digital space, we need to create a better online ecosystem. We need to create a better connection to actually get them to not be overwhelmed, and that creates this bigger challenge of, hey, why do I want to be on my smartphone and binge watch something? And why do I want to do this? And then why do I want to ditch it completely? So what that shows to me a tension that exists within the social media ecosystem. That's why it's important to go beyond that and create a safer and more integrated and hybrid environment across multiple touch points. So we avoid those kind of hot and cold behavior that we're increasingly seeing, to be honest.
I'd probably just say one other thing, which is I think we've talked a lot about the Gen Alpha audience. A lot of it is brands currently won't target that audience because it's under a certain age. I think there's a real opportunity for brands to help the parents in education of some of the products that they're using at the moment, because we see it in certain categories. There's a lot of because this audience is so aware of products, brands. There's a desire for certain brands and products, and I think there's a lot that can be done by retailers, by brands, to help educate parents on what's the right thing that their children should be doing. Things like skincare, products they should be using now versus what they want to use in the future. So I do think there's a real opportunity for brands and businesses to help parents who are also then going to become consumers of those products as well.
Okay, right, I just want to see if anyone in the audience has a question. Yes, gentleman over here, I'll bring you the mic, because I think we haven't got that many between us.
Yeah, I think really interesting discussion. Sorry, it's Libby. You made a really good point about the screen time, right? So already, I think there's one school system that's going to have 35,000 kids that are not allowed to use their phone at school anymore, and that's already impacting this generation, right? And my daughter's 9 years old, and she's very much into physical shopping. But I wondered, maybe a question for all of you as well, but where do you think like the next platform might be? So we weren't expecting TikTok in the past, were we? Do you have any sort of inclination what it might look like? What exciting things that could be?
I mean, I don't have any experience in that. As I've said, you know, I think for us, we're almost thinking kind of, you know, we want to be on those platforms, we want to engage our audience to be on those platforms, but we're kind of going a little bit old school sometimes. Like I've got staff who are going out and talking to Brownie and Guide and Scout groups, like physically going and walking in and saying, come and shop in a charity shop. Here is what we've got to offer. And then, you know, the next day we're seeing those kids in our shop, bringing their toy in, donating it and buying another one. And so I think there's something, it's this kind of slight dichotomy of, you know, yes, there's going to be another platform that comes out, of course there is, but also where are those spaces that you're engaging people literally in person, you know, like walking down to that, for us, walking down to that local group, talking with that parents group about, you know, our shops. So, you know, I didn't answer your question about digital platforms, but I'm just going to encourage you to talk to people in your community who are connectors, because that's the other thing as well. We talk about digital connection, but I think for us as a chain of charity shops, we're quite about that physical connection.
Yeah, I mean, the key point here is community. So we speak a lot about that, by the way. I get that question a lot. Like, what do you think is the next big thing, literally? What I say is, at the moment, look at the core, not the fads, the trends that are happening. Community is the key word. So we're seeing a growth of platforms like Circle, you know, Discord, even like Finstas. Obviously that happened before, but it's happening even more because you want to be in your public-private group. You want to be within that community, that micro communities. We're seeing, obviously I'm going to mention Taylor Swift because everyone mentions her, but we're seeing the growth of fan bases, well, not just fan bases, discography fan bases. You've got your folklore Swiftie, you've got your 1989 Swiftie, you've got, again, creating that ecosystem, you know, creating a platform, a community platform on Circle for women's health, for example. Those are the platforms that are growing at the moment and experiencing growth. So anything linked to communities or micro communities that tap into a cultural shift, that's the main trend that we're seeing there at the moment.
Anything you want to add, Ollie?
I mean, two things. One, Branwell showed earlier some of the brands that they already are in their top desired brands. A lot of those brands are existing brands that are going to evolve. But if I think of my own experience, I look at my godson's use of things like Roblox. Like, if you look at that experience where they're living a digital life through that, they're living their real life through a digital experience and it's gamified, for me, there still feels like even the evolution of the thought for me that someone would watch someone else gaming live for a long period of time. Previously, we were like, but this is very normalized now. 55,000 people will go to a stadium to watch that. So I think there is a world, there is an opportunity in that space that I think will evolve more and more as we go forward.
Thank you. All right. Any other question? Yeah, gentleman over here.
Question for Oliver. You mentioned before that as people are obviously becoming increasingly aware about where they spend their time and how their data is being used, that in the future it's going to be really important for brands to sort of deliver more in the way of a value exchange. So I'm curious to know, like, how much of that has impacted where you guys are going to be deploying media spend in future, and is things like privacy browsers and environments outside of your traditional Google and Bing something that you guys are considering, particularly with the Google antitrust court case and all that?
It's a very good question.
It's a bit of a big one.
It's a very good question. I think look, it comes down to the thing that's always the case with kind of deploying where you want to be, is it's really about where's the consumer. So if the consumer is in a space where they're going to be outside of the traditional spaces now, where they are now, then I would say that's absolutely where we're thinking about. A big one for us is there were a number of brands that probably 2-3 years ago hadn't grown extensively, TikTok being one of them. And if you look at the explosion of that brand over the last kind of 3 years, it's been fueled a lot by a lot of the behaviors that we've talked about today. I think as advertisers, that's our job, is to continually be curious about where that opportunity is and to think not only about the audiences of today, but also the audiences that we will have tomorrow. But I suppose going back to the last point I made is it's also about who's influencing those audiences now. So their parents today are the ones that we are thinking about how we should be talking to them that will hopefully influence them in the future. But openly, we will go where the audience is.
Anyone want to add anything to that question? No? All right then. Time for one more question. Yeah, one more. No? All right. I've got one last fun question because I think we should finish with a little bit of fun. Gen Alpha, you were all Gen Alpha once, so I'd just like to ask the panel what was their favourite brand when they were indeed Gen Alpha. And to save embarrassment, I will start. I'm happy to start. When I was a younger Gen Alpha several centuries ago, my favourite brand was Marvel, and that was before there was a Marvel Cinematic Universe and before there was a computer game, but I was very much into the comics and into the merch. Ollie?
I'm still a very big sneakerhead, so my original brand was Reebok. I wanted Reebok pumps more than anything in the world, so yeah, that was my brand.
Yeah.
I'd say my favorite one, just because of a couple of great moments I had because of it, was Nokia, because I had my first phone, it was maybe like 11. It was this like Nokia Express Music that had like lights on all those sides, and I looked really cool in front of my friends, so that was my favorite one at that point in time.
I grew up in a town of 35,000 people in semi-rural New Zealand. Brands didn't really I knew about Rip Curl and Billabong, but I suppose quite on brand for my current job. My favourite brand was actually a chain of second-hand shops called Save Mart, which if you ever go to New Zealand, they are amazing. Obviously come to Fara if you're in London. But also as well, Pizza Hut and Pizza Hut Buffet.
Okay, mine's less a brand and more my core inspiration for everything, which was the Spice Girls. So Spice Girls are my number one. So I think as a teenager, if I knew I'd be on a panel in my 30s with Adidas tracksuit bottoms, I would have been very, very happy. So yeah, I'm loving all the 90s brands coming back in, and yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, a big round of applause, please, for my panel. Ollie, Libby, Ruth, Leah. And I'll just leave you with the thought that someone once said, age is nothing but a number. Thank you.